A man sells his house to buy a flower, not because he is hungry, not because it will feed his family, not because it will ever bloom in his lifetime. He sells his house because everyone around him is buying the same flower and getting richer by the week. His neighbor bought 3 bulbs in January. By March, she had sold one for enough money to buy a small farm. He watched her do it. This is not a story about stupidity. This is a story about your brain. The year is 1637. The flower is a tulip bulb. The country is the Netherlands. At the peak of the frenzy, a single rare bulb sold for a price that could buy a grand house on an Amsterdam canal. Then, within weeks, it was worth almost nothing. Historians have a name for what happened. They call it tulip mania. But here is the part they rarely tell you. Now change one detail. Replace the flower with a coin that exists only on a screen. Replace 1637 with 2021. Nothing else changes. By the early 1630s, tulips had become the ultimate status symbol of the Dutch Golden Age. A rare bulb called Semper Augustus, its petals streaked with flame-like patterns caused by a virus no one at the time understood, became the single most desired object in the entire Dutch Republic. Merchants stopped trading in bulbs themselves. They began trading in promises. Contracts to buy bulbs that had not even flowered yet, sold and resold before anyone had seen the flower they described. A futures market for flowers. Prices doubled, then doubled again. Weavers, bricklayers, and innkeepers mortgaged their homes to buy contracts they did not understand, for a product most of them would never actually see. No one asked whether a tulip was truly worth a house. They only asked whether tomorrow's buyer would pay more than today's price. On the 5th of February, 1637, a routine bulb auction in Haarlem failed to attract a single bid. Word spread within hours. Within days, the market for tulip contracts had collapsed entirely. Fortunes vanished before the flowers themselves had even bloomed. 83 years later, on the other side of Europe, it happened again. A Scottish financier named John Law convinced the French monarchy to let him establish a new national bank and a trading company with exclusive rights to the riches of French Louisiana. Shares in the company were sold to the public. Law printed new paper currency to fund the purchases. Outside his offices on a narrow Paris street, crowds gathered from dawn until midnight, buying and reselling shares by candlelight. The price of a single share rose more than 20-fold in under a year. And aristocrats sold estates. Servants who had saved modest sums became, on paper, extraordinarily wealthy. A new word entered the French language to describe the frenzy in the streets outside Law's offices: millionaire. By 1720, the company had generated almost no actual revenue from Louisiana. The share price was built entirely on the expectation that tomorrow's buyer would pay more than today's. When that expectation broke, it broke completely. Within months, the paper fortunes of an entire nation evaporated. France's financial system would not fully recover for a generation. 83 years. A different country, a different asset, a different language, the exact same mechanism. Economists spent centuries assuming markets were rational, that prices reflected value, calculated by careful, self-interested individuals. Then, in the late 20th century, 2 psychologists began asking a different question. Not what people should do with money, what people actually do. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found that human beings do not evaluate financial decisions in rational isolation. We evaluate them by watching each other. When those around us appear to be winning, a specific psychological pressure activates, not greed exactly, something closer to fear, the fear of being the only one left behind. Their research showed that the pain of a loss is felt roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of an equivalent gain, which means the fear of missing a gain everyone else appears to be capturing can override caution just as powerfully as the fear of an actual loss. This is not a flaw unique to Dutch tulip traders or French aristocrats. It is a feature running in every human brain in this room. To understand why this mechanism exists at all, you have to go back further than economics, further than money itself. For most of human history, survival depended on group cohesion. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, studying the cognitive limits of primate social bonds, found that human beings evolved to maintain stable relationships with roughly 150 other people. Not thousands, not millions. 150. An individual separated from that group rarely survived the season. Evolution therefore built a brain exquisitely sensitive to what everyone else in that small circle appeared to be doing. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a now famous experiment. He asked individuals to judge the length of simple lines. After seating them among actors instructed to confidently give an obviously wrong answer, more than a third of participants abandoned the evidence in front of their own eye and agreed with the group. Not because they were foolish, because disagreeing with the group registers in the brain as a genuine threat. Later brain imaging studies found that social rejection activates some of the same neural regions as physical pain. For most of human history, that pain signal kept us alive. It told us, do not separate from the group. The group is safety. In a tulip market, or a share exchange. That same ancient signal has only one thing to say. Everyone else is buying. Buy. This mechanism does not only move markets, it also decides who a society turns against. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, tens of thousands of people across Europe, the overwhelming majority of them women, were accused, tried, and executed as witches. The accusations rarely followed evidence. They followed fear. A failed harvest, an unexplained illness, a dead cow. In communities gripped by uncertainty they could not otherwise explain, a single accusation against a widow, an outsider, someone who simply did not fit, could spread through a village within days. Neighbors who had lived beside the accused for decades testified against them, not always out of malice, often out of the same ancient signal that moved tulip buyers a century later. Everyone else believes it. Disagreement felt more dangerous than participation. The historian's term for this is moral panic, a society gripped by fear it cannot resolve, searching for someone to blame, and finding consensus faster than it finds truth. Now look at the present. In 1999, shares in companies with no profit, no working product, and often no clear business plan, traded on the promise of the internet alone. When the market corrected in 2000, several $1 trillion in value disappeared within 2 years. 2 decades later, a digital currency with no government backing, no physical form, and no intrinsic use for most who bought it, rose by several 100% in a single year, before losing most of that value within months. Different decade, different asset, same form, now digital instead of physical, but the same crowd, watching the same numbers rise, feeling the same ancient fear of being left behind. And the other mechanism has not disappeared either. It has simply moved online. A single accusation, true or false, can now spread to millions of people within hours. Consensus can form, and a reputation can be destroyed, before any of the original facts have been verified. No one burns at the stake anymore, but the psychological engine, the fear of being the one who disagrees with everyone else, is identical to the one that convicted women in 17th century villages. We replace the tools. We never replace the mechanism. This channel began with a single sentence. History repeats itself. Because human nature rarely changes, it is easy to hear that sentence and picture emperors, collapsing empires, ancient mistakes made by people very different from us. But the mechanism was never about emperors. It was always about the machine sitting behind your own eyes. Right now. The same brain that convicted a widow in a frightened 17th century village is the brain reading the sentence. The same signal that sent a bricklayer to mortgage his home for a flower is the signal that fires when you watch a number rise on a screen you cannot look away from. Evolution did not build us to evaluate markets or headlines or accusations rationally. It built us to survive inside a group of roughly 150 people, where disagreement was dangerous and consensus was safety. We have kept that ancient machine and handed it a world of 8 billion people moving at the speed of light. Tulips became .com stocks. .com stocks became a digital coin. Village rumors became a global feed. The costumes keep changing. The actor underneath them has not changed in 300,000 years, and it will not change. Because you decided to watch one more documentary about it, it will change only when you notice the exact moment it is happening to you.